My name is Bruce Carter. I'm a retired attorney. I did 30 years at the Department of Justice in Seattle, and since then, my wife and I own property on North Shore Road, though I get my mail in Seattle. But I've spent some very recent time with this Grump Gravel project, and we're glad that it's being concluded, it's being withdrawn, but the county's administration of it was pretty sad. And there was this kind of grandfather notion, you know, if you had an old use of a property, then you may continue it under certain conditions. But the conditions are, first, it needs to be a substantial operation. There was no indication this was a substantial operation. It needs to be more than occasional use. And the lady next door said hadn't seen any use in 30 years. It needs to be of the same scope as what happened before. This had been a borrow pit. The word was that it was borrowed to fill for the port. I don't know whether that's true, but that's the word. But that was long since gone. So just they missed the boat in zoning. When they certified, they stamped it out as meeting zoning when it didn't even come close. And for the zoning to control you, you cannot have allowed it to lay fallow without use for 2 years. And this, well, depend on who you talk to, but there'd been no activity there within much of recent memory. And really, it's up to you to get after people and say, look, be careful. And perhaps more importantly, be transparent. And if you're going to have a big deal in Belfair, well, okay, you've got a developer who wants to do something big. Well, set them down with the newspaper, have a public meeting, tell them what's going on. And I think there was a big sense of betrayal among the people out there. They felt it was being sneaked through because not many people knew what was going on. So we look to you to say, look, when we have significant things, we want you to be careful. We want you to check out the law. Don't just stamp it out. And get out there with the community and tell people what you propose and hear what they're thinking, and so you can build some community. Right now, you've built a lot of community, and it's in opposition to this project. It's good that it's going away, but if you're going to do something the next time, I would say start with the community, because they've all got their dukes up right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Steve Love, and my wife Mary Lou is here with me. And we've lived on Hood Canal since 1983, and I'm a retired businessman now, but I can say that to me, Hood Canal is an unbelievable treasure to this area. And when I found out about this project, this Grump project, you know, about a week ago, I was just astounded that it was going to go through without public hearings or any kind of what appeared to be a real process. And I know as a businessman, when you want to do something, usually there's a lot of process you have to go through to get stuff. And this seemed like this was just kind of slipping through under the radar somehow. But, you know, we swim in the canal, we paddle on the canal, we shrimp on the canal, we crab on the canal, and we're not the only ones. And it's like, this is just an amazing treasure. I can't believe that a mining operation within 200 feet of the water, you know, couldn't, you know, go through a huge process before it would ever be improved. So I'm just so happy to hear that you guys finally came to your senses, and the people who were applying came to their senses, and this isn't going to happen. And I just want to make sure that when something big like this happens again, that you guys really are on your toes and think about what the real impact, you know, to this area is going to be, because, you know, the canal it's a treasure.
Thank you very much. Please.
My name is Brad Carey. I apologize for being late. We were in Belfair at a fire department meeting. We live on Hood Canal. It's a beautiful treasure. I won't repeat what other people have already said. I just want to get on the record that I think it's very important, if we had to be critical here, as to what happened with respect to this Grump Ventures project, that there has to be a fact-checking process when you're applying for permits. And that fact-checking process probably has to occur at the planning department, I'm gonna guess. And if that's done, then that probably would prevent what we experienced in the last 4 or 5 days. Now, getting beyond that, what I really want to stress here is this, is that once the issue was brought to light, this commission, specifically you, Mr. Netherland, Commissioner Netherland, he put so much energy into finding out what was going on and what should be going on, mainly in due to part to Mr. Carter's letter, and you researched it and worked diligently, you know, outside of hours, what, from 9:30 at night to midnight Sunday night? And by 6 in the morning, I got energy, and this man here is already pumping on my phone at 6 a.m. and making things happen. And he served as the mediator to bridge the divide between the opposition and the applicant. And I've been on these projects before, and sometimes they take 6 to 10 years, lots of litigation. This thing was resolved, at least for the moment, and it should be for quite a while, within 36 hours. I've never seen anything like it, and I just want you to understand that there's a lot of people out there that are very appreciative of that type of commitment once the problem was identified, of getting involved and trying to get this resolved. I mean, it's just outstanding. So thank you.
Ken Van Busker.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ken Van Busker, Northeast 61 Davis Farm Road, Belfair. I had intended to say something about the Grump affair, but it got pulled, and I'm happy for that. I wanted to recollect with you folks for a minute. Back in May, I attended a Board of County Commissioner meeting about open space, and at the beginning of that meeting, there were some Dewato residents that came to talk to you about the DNR had requested that you folks weigh in on that natural resource conservation area. And it's my understanding that there's an estimated $20 million that will be removed from the tax base with that proposal. And I also understand that the Port of Dewato recently adopted a resolution opposing that. So I just wanted to encourage the commission to research and perhaps adopt a similar resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then we will move forward to the next part of our agenda. Item number 6, which is the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of tonight's agenda as presented.
And I'll second. You don't have to stay. It's all right, guys. I'll second. Is there any further testimony?
No.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is squared. All right. Item number 7, approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the minutes for July 2nd, July 9th, and July 16th, 2018's briefings, and June 26th and July 3rd, 2018's regular meetings.
I will second. It's been moved and seconded for the approval of the minutes, July 2nd, July 9th, and July 16th, 2018 briefing minutes, June 26th and July 3rd, 2018 regular meeting minutes. Any further additions or subtractions?
No.
Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Item number 8, which is our approval of our action agenda. All items listed under the action agenda may be enacted with one motion unless a commissioner or a citizen asks for it to be removed for a separate vote. We will take the time and we will read each of these items to you. After we're done reading them, you will be given an opportunity to ask a question that will help you to decide if you want something taken off, or you'll also be given an opportunity just to have it taken off, and then you'll get an opportunity to testify at that time. Again, it won't be testifying on the question. Later on, we'll take it off. You'll testify separately on that issue if that's what you want to do. With that being said, I will read item number 8.1 through 8.5. Commissioner Schutte, if you would read 8.6 through 8.10. Item number 8.1, approval to rescind resolution 05-14, salary plan for sheriff command staff. Jail lieutenant, chiefs, undersheriffs will be incorporated into the Mason County non-represented salary range alignment by adoption of a separate resolution. Item number 8.2, approval to authorize the submittal of watershed pathway grant program applications for 3 culvert replacement projects. Item number 8.3, approval to authorize Public Works to utilize the county MRSC roster to select construction projects, inspectors, and enter into agreements. Item number 8.4, approval of the Amendment 3 to contract CLH 18253 between Mason County Public Health and the State of Washington Department of Health. Item number 8.5, approval of warrants, claims clearing fund, warrants number 8057475 through 8057910 for a total of $1,078,849.85.
Mr. Chair, item 8.6, approval to accept an additional $43,690 from the Consolidated Homeless Grant issued by the Department of Commerce and pass through to subgrantee Crossroads Housing, amending contract CH-2018.4. Item 8.7, approval to sign a letter of support on behalf of Mason Transit Authority to be included with a grant application to the Washington State Department of Transportation. Item 8.8, approval to amend Resolution 2818, revising the non-represented salary scale range alignment. The revisions include adding the Therapeutic Courts caseworker salary range 10, correct the Chief Finance Manager title to Chief Finance Officer, remove several unused classifications, reclassify the Personal Health Manager, Environmental Health Manager, and Planning Manager to salary range 33, set the number of unclassified position appointments under the Sheriff's Office to no more than 5, incorporate the following Sheriff's Office positions: Under Sheriff, salary range 46, Chief Criminal Deputy, salary range 43, Chief Civil Deputy, salary range 38, Chief Jail, salary range 43, Chief Administrative Deputy, salary range 37, and Corrections Lieutenant, salary range 35. These changes shall be effective August 1st, 2018. Item 8.9, approval to sign letter of support for the Mason Conservation District grant proposal, reducing flood risks and restoring natural functions within the Skokomish River floodplain. And item 8.10, approval to award $111,000 from the Treatment Sales Tax Fund and enter into contract with Peninsula Community Health Services for an 18-month term with the start date of July 1st, 2018.
Thank you. Now that these items have been read to the community, are there any items that you have a question on to help you decide whether you want it taken off for a separate vote? Chief?
Actually, I don't have a question. I'm going to ask to have it taken off.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions to help them decide whether to take it off for a separate vote? Hearing none, is there any items that the citizens would like taken off for a separate vote?
8.8, please.
Item number 8.8 has been removed for a separate vote. Are there any other items that you would like taken off for a separate vote? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of items 8.1 through 8.10 with the exception of item 8.8.
I will second. It's been moved and seconded for the approval of the action agenda items, item number 8.1 through 8.10, removing 8.8 for a separate vote. Any further comment or discussion?
No.
Okay, me either. I'm just glad that we're getting this approval of with the Treatment Sales Tax Fund to work with Peninsula Community Health Services. Gives an opportunity to do some things from the north end and move it down south. So again, thank you for all the hard work on that. With that being said, any further? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The motion carries. Next up is item number 8.8. This is approval to amend Resolution 28-18, revising the non-represented salary scale range alignment. The revisions include adding the Therapeutic Courts caseworker, salary range 10. Correct the Chief Finance Manager title to Chief Finance Officer. Remove several unused classifications. Reclassify the Personal Health Manager, Environmental Health Manager, and Planning Manager to a salary 33. Set the number of unclassified positions appointed under the Sheriff's Office to no more than 5. Incorporate the following Sheriff's Office positions: Under Sheriff, salary range 46. Chief Criminal Deputy, salary range 43. Chief Civil Deputy, salary range 38. Chief Jail, salary range 43. Chief Administrative Deputy, salary range 37. And Corrections Lieutenant, salary range 35. These changes shall be effective August 1st, 2018. Before I have testimony, I'm gonna have Frank come up and, because all I did was read it. Sure. Although that seemed like a whole book. Would you like to just to explain to the public, please, what we're doing here?
So, given the rescinding of the sheriff's salary plan that was in Resolution 05-14, we needed to move those positions over to the non-represented salary range table and insert each of those positions at a salary level which the commission chose to use the comparators as a base for the range to be put at. So in other words, the statutory comparators that the sheriff's office and the HR department compared used as a base for developing a salary range at which each of these positions were placed.
Question number one, those positions will be Y rated though, right? I'm trying
Correct.
to read that.
In the resolution, they're Y rated,
So they would stay at their same rate?
as they are
The ones that-
currently,
the ones that are currently in.
once they're refilled, or they reach the rate that the salary table would be in the future, then they would start receiving additional salary increases.
Okay, thank you.
And it's not just the sheriff's office, there were a number of other positions that were included or inserted in regards to the reorganization through public health.
Let me give the public an opportunity to ask you questions first
Sure.
before you sit down. Is there anybody in the public who has a question regarding the testimony or the description that was just given? Hearing none? Thank you very much. Now we'll move into public testimony. Chief, please.
Okay, well, thanks for allowing me to give my 2 cents about that. My concern is this. The county negotiates collective bargaining agreements for our line staff. And specifically, the one I want to talk about here today is the corrections deputies. The corrections deputies include line level corrections deputies, supervisors, and that's it, and support staff. The wage scale that you guys selected for the jail lieutenant, which is the supervisor of the jail supervisors, I have a sergeant right now that is making as much money as that lieutenant would be making in that grid. So that creates compression problems for us, and it creates management problems for us, because if my lieutenant leaves, who's going to want to take on the duties and responsibilities of supervising 4 first-level supervisors plus 27 line-level staff for no additional compensation? Matter of fact, they'd be taking a pay decrease in certain circumstances. So somehow, I believe that the commission should adopt some way or some means to address the compression. That's really my concern. And I believe that's why the initial resolution was done in 2014, was it, Frank?
Yes.
Was because of compression. And it was primarily driven by the operations side, because their line staff was, through collective bargaining process, was getting raises, and then the administrative staff, which we are not represented, were stuck. And we don't get raises unless either the Board of County Commissioners approve raises, or in this proposal, the grid would get a raise. So, it's going to create some huge problems for us internally, operationally as well as financially.
Before you step down, I have a question of Frank. Let's stay there, please.
Okay.
We had a discussion, I know, at one point about that one specific position. And we had talked about keeping it with, what do you call it when they're armed? Commissioned. Did we look into that further, or would we end up with that? I'm trying to remember, because I know we had that discussion.
I don't recall if that position is commissioned, and I believe it is.
Yes.
So it is.
But we used the midpoint of the comparator averages in order to come up with all of the recommendations for this salary alignment. So that range 35 is the midpoint of all of our comparators for a lieutenant, jail lieutenant.
For a jail lieutenant.
So here's the number. The range 35 first step would be $5,900 a month, and at step 5, which is a 5-year plan, right? It's 1 year
Yeah.
between steps. Tops out at $7,000 a month. I have a sergeant right now, and that lieutenant is a non-commissioned. It's an exempt position. It's not in the union. It's an exempt. So. She's not eligible, or that position is not eligible for overtime. It's not eligible for education incentive. It's not eligible for holiday pay. It's not eligible for longevity. So that lieutenant is in that range. I have a sergeant right now who is making $62,4854, and that's because the base pay for the sergeant. He gets, in addition to that, that's not counting any overtime. So he gets another $165 a month on top of his base pay, plus he gets a $100 incentive for a special duty that he's doing for us, and he gets a 4.5% education stipend on top of his base pay, which that brings it up to $62.48 a month. So therefore, in essence, I have a sergeant who's, without overtime, is making just as much money, or in some situations, it could be more money than an entry-level lieutenant does.
What range is that sergeant at? Do you know?
They're not on the grid.
They're a CBA.
CBA.
They're a collective bargaining.
So they just stay at that same number, then they don't have a step?
No, he's topped out. There's
Because
5 steps.
We have ours on, so that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
He's top.
So he is topped out, so he's at the
Correct.
top of that, so
Correct.
that's as high as he can go in that one, where the other one can go up to 7.
Correct. And then additionally, through the civil service rules, for somebody to be eligible for a lieutenant's position, they have to have so many years of experience as a sergeant. So if the lieutenant's position becomes vacant in the near future, potentially, I have one person that's eligible through civil service rules for the job, who just by coincidence is making as much money as my lieutenant would be. Plus, when we ask them to do a whole bunch more responsibilities, so basically they're the second in charge in the jail. So that's my concern.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
No,
Okay.
thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to testify at this time?
I would.
Oh,
Along that same line, that compression issue, I'm just looking as a matter of concern, and I hope the board in the future, because we've asked for years for this to occur. Mr. Pinter brought up the idea of comparing counties, and I would ask the board, as I look across the pay scale compared to the BOCC positions that fall underneath the board, I look at different positions in the county, and I hear about the sheriff's office and what we make, but yet I look across that people are making them total wages and benefits of over $170,000 a year, wages and benefits, to supervise 18 people, 58 people, 37, 15, or 6 people, when in fact my office has just my chief alone, if you just take the inmates that he oversees, supervises more people than that, it's just inmates. I would ask that as we move forward to the future, not only do you just look at the sheriff's office comparables, but do you look across at the other county comparables and what they're making in the other counties, and move it fairly and equitably for everybody in the county offices, not just talking about elected officials, but also talking about what the comparables would be. And I think some of those positions would be fairly held where they're at until we reach fair comparisons, because it clearly, in searching with the other counties, we're not using comparable straight across with all positions in the county. I just think it's fair and equitable for all members of the county staff to be considered at their pay grade by the amount of people, but they supervise their training, education, and experience, and those things that other counties use.
Sheriff, I had actually heard about that comment a while back, and I had the idea, and I floated it with Frank, the idea of doing a sample. Also, if you have a few positions that you could give to Frank, we can do a sample on that and see if it is offline. But aside from that, could you mention the one that you said was 170,000? Who is that? What position?
Well, I'm looking at Frank's. I'm looking at the comparable. That's wages and benefits. Comparative. I'm just looking across what was produced off a website here. I'm looking down the sheet.
Okay, because I've never seen that.
But I'm just
anything
looking
like that,
down.
so-
What concerns me is that I look at just, I'm referring, I mean, just because it's here, but, when I think about my jail chief, he not only has to supervise, and when I'm talking to you, he not only has to supervise the whole staff, but he has 94 inmates he's responsible to. So you double or triple or quadruple what anybody else is supervising and what he has to supervise, and then you break it down in compression in our office as to who's making what, and there's many of us that are much lower than other people on my staff. And I think that needs to be considered. Why would you choose to move up the chain of command when you're going to make less money than the people behind you? Why would you take on that responsibility? And I think it's only fair and equitable to look at all positions in the county, not just the sheriff's office, but every one of the department heads and elected officials should be in the same boat. So
And as
thank
I
you.
said, Sheriff, that is something that we are looking at and asking for, so I thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been
But
11 years, and
but
it's
I would-
still
I would
this
like
far
to
away.
see anything that you have that shows anybody that makes that in our county, because I
Sure.
haven't seen anything like that.
Okay.
I've been looking, so.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to testify on this issue? Hearing none, we'll close the testimony part and move into deliberation. Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, I certainly appreciate the comments made by Chief Hansen and Sheriff Salisbury. Compression is an issue that we have to address, and that would be probably, regardless of some of these changes, we're going to be constantly chasing those salaries and those dollars. And I think as we would have conversations with leadership at other agencies, they're probably having the same conversation with their commissions, and it is, your points were well taken. So that being said, there's enough in this resolution that I think is helps move us forward, and I'll be supporting it.
Will you be making a motion?
Yeah, well, I didn't know if you had.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion. Mr. Chair, I move approval of item 8.8.
I will second. It's been moved and seconded for the approval of item number 8. Oh man, I gotta read that whole thing again. Here we go. All right, approval to amend resolution 28.18 revising non-represented salary scale range alignment. The revision includes adding the therapeutic courts caseworker salary range 10, correct the chief finance manager title to read Chief Finance Officer, remove several unused classifications, reclassify Personal Health Manager, Environmental Health Manager, and Planning Manager to a salary range number 33. Set the number of unclassified positions appointed under the Sheriff's Office to no more than 5. Incorporate the following Sheriff's Office positions. Under Sheriff Salary Range 46, Chief Criminal Deputy Salary Range 43, Chief Civil Deputy Salary Range 38, Chief Jail Salary Range 43, Chief Administrative Deputy Salary Range 37, and the Corrections Lieutenant Salary Range 35. These changes will be effective on August 1st, 2018. Comments?
Mr. Chair, I would just also point out that a lot of these conversations were had. I believe Frank had a number of conversations with the Sheriff's Office on some of these issues, and I hope we can continue that conversation in the future.
And the only comment, I would be willing to have that conversation again, even after this, in regards to the lieutenant and the jail, just to look at it. I'm not saying favorable. I'd like to look at it a little closer in the future. We'll perhaps have a briefing with Commissioner Schuette's approval.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So with that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Yes, for 6:30. Next up, public hearing. Item set for a certain time, can't start till after 6:30. The public hearing is to hear objections to the role of rates and charges for Lake Management District Number 2 for Mason Lake and considerations of the role of rates and charges. Staff, Diane, it says it has you reading.
It's me.
We'll pause for a set change.
Yes. Couple hats today. Diane Zorn, Support Services. So as stated, this is the public hearing to hear the objections for the Lake Management Number 2 for Mason Lake. After considering any objections, then I'm asking the board to approve the role of rates and charges and the resolution that would prescribe the interest and penalties. So then this would be enacted. The Lake Management District was approved by ballot, so that's done. And now this is the final step in a very long process. This is a third go around for that Lake Management District, which is it's brought forward by the citizens group. And I've worked very closely with Colby Swanson on the process. Notices have gone out to the citizens. And this is the hearing for there were 7 objections submitted, written objections. They weren't actually to the roll of rates. They were about requesting that the public pay, since the public does use that lake. There are 2 Mason County parcels on the lake. All the parcels, the charge is the same. It's 11 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. And then there was one objection that wants it treated as an LID.
How does that, you'll be given an opportunity to ask a question in a moment also. How does that work on that assessed value for our park? Has that got a full assessed value, or?
Yes, yes. There's a lot of, I know, Mankey timber property along the lake. So of course it's probably in the timber, so it's a lower assessed value.
Okay,
But the rate per the 1,000 is the same.
thank you. Does anybody have any questions in regards to the testimony? You'll be given an opportunity to testify if you like, but if you have a question of anything that was just read to you, this would be your time to ask that question. Go ahead.
How many ballots were sent out and how many were received?
There were, I think it was 980 ballots, and then this one I don't have. There were about 400 and something received back. It was just about a 50% return, I think. It was at the last hearing where I had all that data.
That's higher than our normal
It was a
election.
pretty good return, considering, ballots.
So Diane, would this be it? In our packet here, we have ballots were mailed May 16th. There were 1,083 parcel ballots mailed and 477 returned.
There you go. Yes.
And what was the balance of yes and no on them?
It just says the majority were in the affirmative.
And I can get that for you. We kept, as they came in, we tallied them. And it was a simple majority, is what.
By law.
Sure, no problem.
Any other questions for Diane in regards to anything that she just gave testimony on? Commissioner, you have any other questions for her?
I do not.
I have one. The one thing I understand about this is we don't have the authority to yes or no this. It was already
Correct.
done by a vote of the people.
The ballot.
So could you please describe our role as a commission on this?
Right
Right
now,
now.
you're basically the Board of Equalization, so if these were objections to the actual rates, you could rule on if you think they had a valid objection, and then it will be to actually adopt the roll. That's
Okay,
your action.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, hearing no more questions for staff, we will close staff testimony and we will move to public testimony. Is there anybody in the public who would like to testify at this time on this issue? Please come forward. We ask that you please come forward, announce your name, tell us who you are, perhaps where you're from, and remember all discussion is to the commission only, and we always hope that we treat each other with absolute respect. So,
Good evening.
What's your name?
I'm Greg Curley. I
Greg.
live at Mason Lake.
Curley.
And, I want to say first off, the people at Mason Lake have worked and spent countless hours trying to get this passed. And I think everybody appreciates that and everyone supports what they've all done. There's some parts of it that a lot of people I've talked to have concerns about. I came to the last meeting and I was concerned about several things. And first there's Green Diamond. They own this over 40 acres and 2,800 lineal feet of waterfront. And when back in the days when it was Simpson, it was wonderful that it was their employees. And they're getting taxed from what I can see as timberland tax for those parts, which is a lesser rate than what the people that live there are taxed. And I don't know if that's appropriate anymore. They are selling season passes to the general public now. And they have a tremendous high usage of people down there. So I'm just not sure that it's really designated as timberlands anymore. They are profiting from that. Well, they're probably not profiting, but they're cutting their costs, yet they're paying a lower percentage from what I can tell than all the other residents. And they got 2,800 feet of waterfront there. So that's one issue I have, that if they're going to do that they should be taxed appropriately on what their share should be. The second is the county's property. I think it's wonderful that the county has this beautiful facility for everybody to use on the lake, but I'm just not so sure that is Mason County the only county in this state that doesn't charge a launch fee or a fee to use the parks, the state has the Discover Pass. The state charges a launch fee. So I've been monitoring for a couple of weeks. 2 Sundays ago, there were 64 boats with trailers at the county park. It was overflowing. They were out parked on the road, and there was the same number of cars parked in there. And this is wonderful. It's free. You can put in. So I went on a Tuesday to see what the difference was. And there was 13 cars there. I went Sunday again. There was 34 trailers parked in these are just boat trailers. Actually, there was 31 in the lot. There was 3 waiting to put in and 1 taken out. So at 3 o'clock on Sunday, there was 34 users. And I'm wondering, when the Lake Commission and everybody started 6 years ago, they went to everybody, the state and the county, for help, and said, we had no money. We had no money. Well, are we missing the boat here? I mean, you build a really nice launch, prove a parking lot, and we don't pay any fees, and those are the likely culprits of bringing in the weeds and the milfoil and everything. It isn't the people that live on the lake. Those people don't go anywhere else. Those people enjoy the lake. And we want everyone to enjoy the lake. But we want everyone to pay their fair share. And the highest use of anyone else in the lake is Green Diamond in the county. And I don't think charging them both of those a reduced rate than the rest of the taxpayers pay on that lake is appropriate. The other issue, you get 64 boats on the lake, it raises a huge safety concern. People are anchored in front of our houses. Do you think they go all the way 5 miles down the lake to go to the bathroom? Do you guys think they do that? They stay on their boat and they pee in the lake. I've witnessed it. And they're not paying anything to help in the cleanup and to keep the lake the way it is and the way we like it. And last time I was here, I asked, and you said you were going to check into the Parks Department to find out why they don't charge a fee there, like most agencies in the state. Did you have time to do that, or?
We haven't had that discussion yet, but we can.
I mean, there's a lot of simple ways to pay. People want to use the lake and continue to use the lake. You can sell a yearly pass. They can hang it in their window. You have a caretaker there. You know, I mean, it's just like diamond parking. They could put the money in a box and get collected once in a while.
Well, we as a commission, as you said, we have not had that discussion, but
Right.
I know we will eventually be having, I was a port commissioner, and they end up putting in machines that
Sure.
that they do it.
For the launching
Yes.
at the port?
Yes, I'm not sure whether we're ready to do that as a county, but we haven't even had that conversation, because the thing is, for the people here, is they pay for it in many other ways than their taxes. The question is, how do you separate out the ones that aren't from here? And I don't know that, but again, I agree with Commissioner Schutte. I think we need to have that discussion.
But aren't we as the residents paying for more?
Again,
We had to make our own district because nobody had any money to help.
We can agree with you or disagree with you on that. It won't change where we're at.
Sure.
Because we can't do that here with this. There's a whole process for anything like that would come in, but you definitely have a valid point for us to discuss. And we will end up discussing, we'll have a briefing. Perhaps you can leave a number and we can try to have somebody contact you at the time. When we have briefings, you're not given an opportunity to testify, because that's not what briefings are. That's when we gather information and we decide the type of things we want to do. So if you don't mind, if you leave your contact information, we'll try to have you contacted when we have a briefing.
Sure. You guys have any other things to add?
Well, I'll invite them up one
Okay.
at a time.
I probably forgot something.
It's all good. It's all good. All right. Is there anybody else who would like to testify at this time?
I'd like to make one point.
Please, come on up.
I agree with this gentleman, absolutely.
We need you to first say who you are, and
Oh, okay.
because everything is recorded here.
Yeah, my name is Peter Radell. I live on the outlet of Mason Lake, and I agree for most of what he said, absolutely. But I have one issue. There's some people that can afford it, but they would like to use the lake. What do you do about those guys? Are they being deprived because they don't have the funds? If you can differentiate between the guys with their $50,000, $100,000 boats and the ones that just barely make it, they still should use the lake. Believe me, I like to have a private lake myself. There's no question about it. But for the people that want to enjoy it and don't have the funds, they should have the same right to go there. It's America.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree with the gentleman too, except on this point. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to testify at this time? Please.
Yeah, I'm Gary Bonfield, and we're all neighbors at Mason Lake and all have the same concerns. I'm just curious, does the county pay that caretaker? I mean, it's part of it. Is that a funding thing by the county that they pay for them at the?
We pay for their space, basically, their electricity, utility rate, stuff like that. We don't actually pay them a wage.
So there again, if we had a fee, that would help offset the money being spent to have a caretaker living there, I guess, too. Well, I definitely think there needs to be some sort of a charge for the people. I mean, you go to Toano and it's a great place, and you got people in the county. You know, you got to have Discovery Pass, and it's $7 to launch your boat at Toano. So there's no reason that Mason County couldn't have a charge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to testify? Hearing none, we will close public testifying and go into Commissioner deliberation.
Sure, Mr. Commissioner, or Mr. Chair, I thank you. I think to the first points, Diane, maybe we can have something scheduled with Ross to have a conversation about launch fees and that kind of thing here in the near future, and have that conversation. It is interesting. I think the National Park Pass is like $80 for an annual pass, and you have the $30. And we do have to balance that with some of these other concerns with when our public lands free and accessible to the public, and so that's not a conversation that we would enter into lightly in order to have that that kind of a policy conversation that has that kind of an impact on the community and that kind of thing. So, but I do appreciate your comments on that, as I did the last time you were here. So we'll get something scheduled. That being said, I would make a motion to approve the resolutions confirming and approving the roll of rates and charges and prescribing interest and penalties for late payments for the Lake Management District Number 2 for Mason Lake.
I will second. It has been moved and seconded for the approval of the resolution confirming and approving the roll of rates and charges and prescribing interest and penalties for the late payments for the Lake Management District Number 2 for Mason Lake. Any further discussion?
No.
Just it's never fun, without a doubt. And as the commissioner had pointed out, we will be looking into it further. Does not mean it's going to happen, okay? Because there's a lot of other people that would testify and have different opinions. But the question has to eventually be asked, and your action today may have brought about that question being asked. So we'll find out from there, and we'll have further conversation. So thank you for participating and bringing your opinion. With that being said, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. We will move into the end of our agenda, which is there any public officials or public electeds or public officials who wish to speak at this time? Hearing none, we'll move into calendars, board calendars.
Mr. Chair, a couple items from the past week. Had our kind of a kickoff meeting with Christina Sanders from Washington State University's Department of Intergovernmental Studies, and they're with the support and encouragement of Dan Tudeberg from our Washington State University Extension. They're going to be helping the county at no cost to us on a strategic planning process, and so had a very good and positive initial conversation with her, and we'll look forward to working with them over the next few months on that process. Also had a chance to meet with the new executive director of the Economic Development Council, and very excited about the potentials there, and really ultimately what that means for the future of Mason County and our growth and development. And really appreciated Jennifer taking time to come and chat with me, as I know she did with you and Commissioner Drexler as well. Also had a chance to talk with Chief Clinton Volk from Fire District 6 out in the Union area, talking about some of the fire chief's concerns, especially as they start to look ahead to some of that growth that we keep working towards, and we're very confident is right around the corner, and how the fire service can be a partner in that, and also how they need to be looking forward and preparing for that. And Certainly my hat off to the folks in our fire service here in the county. I know there's another brush fire out in the Matlock area, in the Wattsville area, and they're out there working that, and it's just it's been a challenging past couple of weeks for the fire service here in the county, and really kind of echo some of the partnership aspect of this fire season, and how we seem to be talking a lot about the State Department of Natural Resources, DNR, but that's one of the areas where they are a very good partner to our county in coming out and helping with wildland fires. Also had a chance to chat with some folks from PUD3 today. They have some exciting projects in the works regarding broadband and fiber. They have their Fiberhood project that they're working on up in the Collins Lake area, and hoping to get expansion of that throughout the county. It really, again, coming back to that economic development theme, really helps level the playing field between urban and rural communities, and will make us ultimately more competitive the more people we can get service to and on fiber. Looking ahead, have a criminal justice working team meeting tomorrow morning. Also have a meeting of the newly formed, or a meeting with members of the Shelton City Council tomorrow to discuss our newly formed Housing and Behavioral Health Board, as well as a meeting of the Alliance for a Healthy South Sound, and then a phone meeting with Mark Hall from Hall Equities, again trying to beat that economic development drum, and hopefully as they had some changeover in project lead here for Shelton Hills. Hopefully we can see that project start to take shape a little bit more here in the coming months. And then I will be out of town for the next week or so on some family business.
Short form met with a lot of constituents. The gravel issue was out there, so there was quite a few. And if I wasn't on the ground with them, I was on the phone with them. This is a busy week, but it all turned out good for everybody, I think. Well, not everybody, actually, thinking back on that, because we still there's a loss of an opportunity for jobs and stuff that came with that. Hopefully we find a way to do it in a smaller version and everybody ends up okay and happy. North Mason Chamber of Commerce board meeting this week. I was in Yakima for a couple of days for the risk pool. I went to the homeless event they had here in Shelton. It was supposed to go from I think 10 to 6. I showed up at a little after 3 and it was already over, and I heard that there was still quite a few things that happened for the homeless, just not many speakers or enough applied, and that's maybe next time. I appreciate that she pulled all that together, though, and made that happen such a short notice. Briefings, North Mason Community Voice meeting the other night. I met with the ARC director and their staff, Finance Committee meeting, Mount Moriah Board meeting, and Board of Health meeting. That's next week. Tomorrow, Memorial Hall, North Mason Chamber Luncheon, Community Action Council, Cemetery Board meeting, Reunification Day, which is kind of pretty cool. The idea that they have a specific day for celebrating the reunification of families that have been separated for different issues that have occurred due to maybe law enforcement, or they violated the law, they did something wrong, and they've earned the right to have their kids back. So it's a very special day, and I've been asked to go for that. One of our employees is actually preaching on Saturday, and I intend to go. So in case you intend to go, I just wanted to make sure that we have it on the record that we will both be there or we won't. With that being said, we don't have a briefing or meeting the next week, so we're in real short form. Anything further to come for this body?
Yes, sir.
Hearing none, we're at the end of our agenda. We are adjourned.